everyone, and welcome to another Aussie Mac Zone show number 104 for this fine day, 14th of July 2015. Well, maybe not so fine. It's pretty cold and rainy here in Adelaide. How is it where you are, Michael?
Yeah, well, it stopped snowing and was very warm today. Got up to 16, I think. It's pretty good.
Ooh, warmer than here. So what are we having? It's Arctic vortex, isn't it? That's
Yes,
causing this weather at the moment. So it all sounds very impressive.
just a bit
And
brisk.
yes, not joining us tonight is Garth, who's on a boat somewhere. Well, I guess it would be a ship, wouldn't it? Cruising the seas.
Well, as I say, who gives a ship?
Absolutely.
We're not there on the grog.
No, that's right. And of course, Aussie Mac Zone brought to you by athwebhosting.com.au with Australian servers based in Sydney, affordable and competitive plans, and 99.95% uptime. We're back to that again this week after our leap second last week. From only $5.95 per month when paid annually, and all the good stuff you want: cPanel, WordPress, Joomla, PayPal, all kinds of things. So that sounds pretty good to me. So athwebhosting.com.au if you're looking for some web hosting. And probably tonight, I would say we're probably looking for some stories because it's pretty quiet out there, isn't it, Michael?
Yeah, it has been a bit quiet. A couple of little incremental upgrades here and there, but yeah, we're all waiting for like the big news was the beta versions being released, but it's still not something you'd put on your regular machine.
No, I think that's something. Yeah, you wouldn't want to put it onto something you rely upon day to day to do your work. But I guess by all reports, it seems pretty good. It's fixed a few things and doing all the right things that it should. So that is positive.
Yes, mate. Yeah, I'm just having an interesting. Yeah, that's all right. I was seeing
What's wrong?
different things on my video screen as I do the production side. I'm sorry, I was a bit drifted off there, but yeah, we've got things to look forward to. That's all I can say.
Yeah, well, again, it's the under the hood improvements. So yeah, I think that's it's not packed with features. There's not so much there to talk about, but look a bit better performance and some stability. All reports. I think Mail is runs a little bit better as well. So that's always a positive.
Yeah,
So what have we got in stories? What have we got in stories?
stories. Well,
Apple.
yeah,
Apple.
go
How
for
many
it.
sells less than 20% of all smartphones, but makes 92% of the profit. So I think there's probably no surprises there, and it's really that Apple have never been in a race to the bottom with their phones, and obviously it's paying off for them.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's actually gone up for that 92% of the profit, because there's a lot more. Samsung's having a lot more challenges with the lower end phones, the Android phones, I think, and Apple just seem to be selling more and more, even though it's less than 20%. They've even with the Mac, it's never been over 10% realistically, and it's still making money for them too. So,
Yeah. I think with 92% profit, Apple certainly aren't leaving much on the table, are they? I think that's pretty much how you'd like it. If you're having to sell another 80% of phones to make that other 8%, you'd probably be quite happy to leave that. So presumably that also means that there's some people out there who aren't making any money.
well, I think is it Xiaomi or the dude that runs one of those very cheap Chinese companies. He's more interested in being sort of the Amazon of China. So he's interested in selling the services. So basically, give away the product,
Okay, the
make
hardware.
money on
Yep.
the services. So that's
Well,
probably
Samsung are probably
part of it.
making something out of their phones, I guess. BlackBerry, not so much. Probably Nokia, not so much, or Microsoft slash Nokia, not so much.
Well, no,
Um,
they've given up on Nokia just about, haven't they?
well, it seems that way, doesn't it? Who else we got out there? HTC, Sony Ericsson. Do they still make phones?
Yeah, Sony still makes a phone. I think they've got an Android and a Windows phone.
Yeah, but I think Apple would be quite happy with that, and probably as we would have expected, and probably set to continue with the success of the iPhone 6. Obviously, there's some pent-up demand there for larger screens, so Apple sort of maybe gaining back across some people who might have gone to an Android phone for a bigger screen. I think they picked a few of those back up as well.
Well, they supposedly have ordered more iPhone 6 S, shall we say, phones for the initial production run than they did for the iPhone 6. So that'll be interesting.
It's probably a pretty safe bet.
Yeah, it's just
Now, Facebook, Facebook security chief. What has he got to tell us?
he wants to
He
get
wants
rid
to
of Flash.
Didn't Apple want to do that 7 years ago?
I think they've nearly succeeded, but there's been a couple of big hacking revelations in the last week, and a lot of it's to do with Flash, apparently.
Yeah, I think there was something last week. Yeah, you're right. Last week, maybe the week before, but certainly recent times again about a Flash exploit, and Adobe putting a patch out for it. So, well, security issues, performance issues, you name it. It's probably something you can live without. And look, really, if you really have to use it sometimes, I think it's if you run Chrome has it inbuilt, doesn't it?
Yeah,
If,
yeah, that's
I
what
remember
I do
correctly.
personally.
Yeah.
I
So you're not having to install it as you would for Safari or Firefox. So um, that way you haven't got the nasties of it. Chrome being what it is, just updates itself. I don't know, hourly, nightly. It seems to be fairly often.
yeah,
So one's hoping that Google are keeping on top of things, which they tend to with Chrome. So
and it
that's
is
probably the
very
best
easy.
thing.
Yeah,
And that's been the recommendation from us for a long time that don't have Flash on your machine. Um, if you have to insist on using a website that does have Flash, um, um, use Chrome to browse there.
yeah. Like I just have Chrome in my dock. I use Safari 99.9% all the time. But if you just get that one site you need to go to for something, and it comes up and says you need Flash, I just drag the icon next to the address. Like www.flash.com. Just drag that little icon down on top of Chrome, launches it
Yep.
on that page, starts playing the video, and away you go.
Yep.
It's pretty
Yeah, I
simple.
think that's safest way to do it. And I guess it's probably Flash is not followed far behind by our friend Java, isn't it? And I think I did hear as well that good news from Oracle that they've got rid of that stupid Ask toolbar. Bad news, now they're putting in the Yahoo toolbar because obviously people want toolbars.
I don't know why. Why do they want toolbars?
And I think it might be something to do with Oracle collecting some money each time that's installed.
Yes, which is
Sorry, go.
but well, I would have thought they would be making money doing database work instead of just going penny pinching for those little
Yeah,
things.
I don't think they do too badly, do they?
Nah, not for a database company.
No.
So
Um, iTunes.
iTunes, yeah.
I don't know. Maybe we could put that in the same bucket as Java and Flash. Maybe people, not so much people's favourite application, and probably well overdue for a rewrite.
For the big
Um,
rewrite, yeah.
yeah, but it insists it struggles along. So what are we up to now? 12.2.1. It solves a problem with iTunes Match tracks being converted to Apple Music DRM. So what happens there?
Yeah, well, um, if I had my songs that I've dragged off my CD into iTunes, then I've signed up for iTunes Match. There's been a bit of kerfuffle in the last few weeks since the new Apple Music, where it was, and I throw my songs away. It would make those DRM versions of the song. So I think they've sort of resolved that if the original wasn't DRM, then it won't put DRM back on it. But you shouldn't copy it on and trash your library and just rely on the iCloud version, and you won't have that problem.
No, and I guess this is the thing, isn't it, where we've got iTunes Match and Apple Music. I guess the key thing is that whilst you have iTunes Match, when you do download those songs, they don't have DRM on them, as opposed to if you only had Apple Music and you get songs from the Apple Music Cloud, they do have DRM on them. So if you did have them stored locally and you cancelled Apple Music, you would no longer be able to play them. But I've been having a little bit of a think about that, and maybe you need to be looking at making a decision. I mean, sure, keep the music that you've got now, but like moving forward, is it just if all the music you want, or is going to be released from now onwards, is going to be in the cloud anyway, and you're going to always pay for Apple Music? Is it really such a big deal anyway? Who cares? Why not drop iTunes a Match? You pay your $10 a month and get all the music you want from now on forward. Thinking about back in the day when CDs first came out, or 20, 25 years ago, I was buying CDs, a couple of months and whatever. They're costing $20, $25. So back in 1990s type money, probably dropping $50, $40 a month on a couple of CDs. Now in 2015's type money, what are we, $12 a month, and anything you want, and anything that's coming. It's not. It's like,
yes,
it sounds pretty. It sounds pretty good when you put it that way.
Yeah, and it's just that people have forgotten about that we used to pay for songs. I think that's the biggest problem, isn't it?
Well, I think there is a bit of that mentality, and it's not helped by the App Store type stuff, isn't it? People don't want to buy applications anymore either. Like an application, a serious application, gee, it's more than $2. Gee, that's expensive. $5. Gee, I wouldn't want to pay that for an app. People just become attuned to not paying for things, and that's not sustainable.
No, it's just the scale is so much bigger that people think, oh well, the developer's getting is $1.29 or for the app, or $1.99 for an app. But if there's 1 million people, they think that's $2 million less Apple's little bit. But there's a lot more to it than that, and I'd be willing to bet there's not heaps and heaps of apps out there that sell 1 million of them.
Yeah, that's it. So I think like anything, supply and demand will tend to sort it out when people aren't paying for stuff, and the supply is not going to be there.
And it was interesting that Spotify was suggesting to its clients to, if you're actually buying or paying for Spotify through iTunes, that you should just quit that and go and sign up through the website, and just reminding people that it will be $2 or $3 cheaper if you do it through their website as opposed to doing it through the Apple store because of Apple's 30%.
Yes, that's true. So just save every little bit that you that you can. Okay, I guess speaking of apps, we don't discriminate. So we'll Mac apps, iOS apps, we play with them all. What have you been looking at on the Mac recently?
Yeah, well, I've been enjoying. I've been using it for a long time. It's Carbon Copy Cloner, which is a backup software, and you know how I'm feral about that. And they've just released version 4, which does everything it used to do. It does a few more things in it, but it does things like log on to network drives, do the backup, and then log off the network drive. So you're not tying up the network all the time. That's just an example of what it does. It'll make a bootable clone, so you can copy your current drive onto an external drive, and if something happened, you can start work straight away and keep going. But again, it's, I don't know, $65 Australian or something, but it's a great app, and that's for 5 personal use machines.
Yeah, that's not too bad at all, is it? And you'll be happy you paid that money when the time comes to use it. And I think that's the key thing with having a bootable, I guess, a full backup that's bootable. That number one, you've got your backup, of course, but number two, if you really need to get working, you can boot off that, finish off what you need to be doing before you worry about restoring, repairing drives, etc. I'm of the same opinion around that, and I'm a super duper person though, so quite similar, and quite for the same reason that super duper to do my full bootable backup, and Time Machine running all the time on the machine. It's much more for I guess the versioning, us expecting the whole machine to break. So if want to get that to an earlier version of a file, or something gets deleted accidentally or on purpose and you want it sometime later, Time Machine's quite good for that. And I guess it's still around the thing of you can't have too many backups. So if you've got Time Machine and you're doing your regular full disk backup, and probably doing your regular full disk backup and taking a copy of that off site as well, combined with maybe even having stuff on Dropbox and whatever, so which is automatically syncing back up from the cloud, as well as being locally, which you are still backing up. You can't have too many copies of things in case the worst happens.
Yeah, well, that's right. Even to the point where I've got a little USB stick, so there's one particular folder that I back up onto the USB stick, so I can be working away all day, working away, and then just before I actually transport the machine, I plug the USB stick in, and it just does all the changes from the machine to the USB stick. When it's finished, it just eject it, and it just knows as soon as that USB stick goes in to do the backup. And I haven't heard from the Carbon Copy Cloner guy, but the Super Duper guy made some points this week about the new security measures in El Capitan was stopping his from working. He's fixed that now for El Capitan, but it's obviously to do with more sandboxing and tighter security. Yeah.
Something else broke around that someone was talking about, and again, still in beta. So, of course, the whole point of that, it gives developers time to
get it right,
test and get it right as well. No, it escapes me now. I can't remember what that one was, but again, it was to do with the sandboxing.
Yeah, there's another bit of software that I like using. It's called Devon Think Pro Office, and it's basically a big filing cabinet that allows you to have a paperless office. So I can take a photo or scan it, put it into Devon Think Pro Office. it'll convert it to a PDF. It'll make it searchable PDF so that I can go back and look at it later on. You can change the size of the files. You can merge files. It's just very good. The advantage is you can have different databases. So you could have a personal one and a work one, or you can have a database that's just, say, purchase orders, and a database that's invoices, things like that. So they have different levels, but yeah, that's the one I use for my paperless office, as best you can have.
Yeah, that's yeah, the way to do things these days, isn't it? And to be able to manage it seamlessly is the whole trick. Otherwise, you sort of end up with the same issue you have in the real world, in the digital world, where you have all your stuff, but it's just in the total mess on your machine, rather than being a total mess all over your office or desk. Yes. For those interested, I did recall what did break, and probably not surprisingly, because it's I guess something a little bit lower level, was trim, which was associated with when you're using a third-party SSD. They support trim, I guess, which is a process around doing cleanup, etc., on an SSD, and it's within the I guess the controller on the SSD looks after that stuff. Apple did do it, but only on Apple drives. And
no. So if you'd have paid attention to Aussie Mac Zone last week, I think it was last week, the latest release of Yosemite, you can go in terminal and turn trim on so that you don't have to use third-party products.
Yes, because it's got trim force now.
Yes.
I was getting to that. That was a bit that I remember that broke. And that might have been just from the latest update rather than El Capitan. But there was a little bit of outcry on the Twitterverse around that, because obviously a few people were using third-party SSDs. I haven't worried about that, because I guess I just haven't worried about it. I've got Apple SSDs, I guess, in my laptop and in my iMac, so I have just let things do whatever they do. Have you had to play around with that much?
Only a little bit, just recently, because one of my customers, we'd put an SSD in his machine about 18 months ago. He was running the third-party trim tool.
Yep.
And it was saying it was having trouble loading, but that was with the latest update. So I just went in terminal, just enabled the trim, and it's been working fine ever since. Hasn't noticed any difference.
Very good, very good. And I think it's again, if you've got a machine that's a few years old, and especially a laptop, I think it's a good way to create some longevity for your machine, isn't it? Especially if you had a spinning drive, to move it to SSD, put some more RAM in if the machine supports it, and you're probably good to go for a few more years, really.
Well, I'm using an older 15-inch MacBook Pro now to do the video and audio production for the shows. Now, it's me that's having trouble switching and not quite paying attention, but I put some more RAM, put it up to 8 gig, which is what Apple recommends, even though some people believe it can go to 16 now. Put the SSD in it just for the speed, and it doesn't fail during recording anymore. So it does make a difference.
Yes, absolutely. And on a bit of a tangent around SSDs, since we're on them at the moment,
Yep.
Did see something a couple of days ago around, I think it was MIT and supercomputers, and the whole thing around, massive supercomputers to do processing. Apparently, the big constraint, and especially from a cost perspective, has been around RAM. RAM is very expensive, and high-speed RAM is very expensive. So they've built I I guess, a concept or a prototype at the moment that doesn't use RAM. It uses SSDs.
Yeah, yeah,
And so in the way that it works, um, they've made some changes so that some of the processing is offloaded from the processor to the SSD controller. So yeah, presumably they've done something funky with the SSD controllers as well. But in certain applications, and they were saying certainly for like large database manipulations, etc., they're getting very good performance. RAM was always going to be faster, but you don't drop that much. But you drop a hell of a lot in cost by going to a different model with your processors and SSD. So that may be interesting as well. That I guess whilst SSDs are sort of getting faster, they've got sort of fast enough now that maybe RAM's becoming less important. So that may see its way through, as some of these things do, to our day-to-day type computers.
yeah. Well, just recently, even with the Australian dollar, it's the RAM prices have gone up, but the SSD prices have still come down. So, 12 months ago it was, say, $1 a gigabyte. Now it's about 70 cents a gigabyte. Whereas RAM's actually gone up by about the same amount as the Aussie dollar. Yeah, so it's about 20% dearer at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, that tends to follow the dollar fairly well.
Yeah, and
well,
because there's such a big difference in the price, that means for a quota supercomputer where you have 40 computers, that means you can have 50 for the same price if you're not paying for all the RAM. So
yeah, that's certainly what they were saying. I was just going to say, what's the story with spinning hard drives now? That we seem to be hitting a bit of a limit that, get into Officeworks, I guess, and look at your USB drives, and 4 terabytes seems to have been the top drive for a while. I think there might be a few 5 terabytes here and there, but weren't the guys out there doing 8 and 10 terabyte stuff? Is that stuff coming through anywhere yet?
Not that I'm really aware of. Even to the point where trying to get bigger 2.5-inch spinning drives for people that want big drives in their laptops, for example, or they might put an SSD as their main drive and ditch the DVD and put a drive in there. But it's tricky because you can get bigger 2.5-inch external drives, but the interface board's different. It's actually straight USB onto the board these days, where it used to have a little interface card in the middle. Okay. So it's a bit of a pain in the neck, so you can't cheat like you used to. So yeah, it's 1 terabyte sort of the limit, unless you want to really go wild and search the world. But the average shop's never going to have one.
No, certainly not necessary. So yeah, storage seems to sort of be a bit of status quo for a while, doesn't it? So I guess again that's why everyone's gone mad for their NAS and those types of things to go and put multiple drives in your little SAN or NAS that you have on your home network and do it that way.
Yeah, well, the price of those came down fairly dramatically, and I think spinning drives are sort of, or hard drives are in that transition period between SSD and spinning drives at the moment. Like the costs, SSDs are never going to be as cheap as a spinning drive because of the older technology, but as more and more people buy an SSD, the price comes down. Less people buy a spinning drive, so they just stop making them.
Yeah, I guess we're still to see what happens there, because the other thing that's been said is that when it comes to long-term storage, putting stuff on an SSD and going and putting it away in the cupboard isn't as good as putting it on a spinning drive and putting it away in the cupboard. It might not be there when you go back to look at it in a year's time or something. So I think spinning drives have still got something to them. And look, I guess to that extent, around the place, people still use magnetic backup tapes, don't they? So
that's right.
Stuff does around. Anyway, we've probably done that one to death. I think as we go down tangent and rabbit hole. iOS apps. Anything out there that's taken your fancy?
No, I think there's nothing jumped out at me in the last week. My son, what was that one you did last week?
Fallout Shelter.
Yeah, Fallout Shelter. Yeah, my son's still enjoying that, so I'm assuming you are too.
I've been trying not to waste too much time on it. That's the problem when you find a good game; it can become all-consuming.
Yes, it can, can't it? I'm a man of simple taste. I just play my solitaire to put myself to sleep, but even that I had to install an old one because they put heaps of ads on the new one. So I sort of installed the old one and just refused to update it when it comes through. That was very annoying. I paid for it, so I don't know why I've got to pay for it and put up with ads.
Well, that's a little bit harsh, isn't it?
Yes. So, but yeah, puts me to sleep, so that's fine.
Do I have any?
Do you have any?
Not really. I did have another one around. We're talking storage and online storage. Around a service called ODrive, and it I guess is a front end to all of your online storage stuff. So if you've got your Dropbox and Google Drive and OneDrive and whatever else that you've got, it basically provides a nice front end and a way to manage all your files and sort of look after all this stuff in the back end. So you're not constantly switching between apps and doing stuff with logging on and whatever else. I guess you're linking all your accounts to ODrive and you get them all. Yeah, all from your desktop. So that's I guess another Mac pick, but I've had a little bit of a look at it. Look, it's interesting, and I guess if you use a lot of those services and you got a lot of storage in them, it might be a bit of a neater way to look after it. I tend to be a Dropbox person, and I've got enough space there to do my stuff, so that's suits me fine. And obviously with the way that it works, Dropbox works well with iOS and everything. It's just on my Macs, on my iPhone, iPad, it just works. But that was a interesting one anyway. That might be worth a look if you're signed up to every online storage place under the sun. It might be something that would help you tie all that together, so to speak.
Well, I'd just like to remind people that just let me switch that, if it will. Sorry, I'm just having trouble switching the camera. There we go. One of my customers this week said, how do I put a signature on a PDF and just send it back to the person that sent it to me? And I just want to remind you, you can do that in preview on the Mac. You can call up a PDF, and if it says put a date in, you just click where they want you to put the date, and it'll put a little insertion box in there, and you can type your date in. You can click where it says please sign here. You can click there, put an insertion point in, and in one of the menus there's add signature. You can sign a piece of paper and hold it up in front of the camera, and that'll focus in on that signature. Take a picture of it, crop it, and let you install it into that point on that document, and it remembers that that's your signature. So the next time you want it, someone sends you a PDF and say please sign, you can just click the insertion point, go up there, grab your signature and install it again, and just save it as a PDF, print it, send it off, whatever you want to do. It's that easy. It's great. Oh, I've lost your voice. I've lost your sound, Jason. Sorry. Try that again.
Hello, are you there?
Yeah, back again. Sorry, man.
Here we go. Yes, preview is very good, and yes, again, if things not to install, don't go putting Adobe Reader on your on your Mac to get PDFs. Preview does it very well and much safer.
And it's very little. It's very small. It's a very small package and just works tremendously well.
Indeed, it does. Anything else we had to cover tonight?
Oh, there's just whether you've seen the new Apple ads for the iPhones.
No, I've seen the ones that have got the movies. Are they the ones where people have done the movies shot an iPhone 6? Or
No, these are some more ones now.
More ones?
Yeah,
No,
they're based on the premise is if it's not an iPhone, it's not an iPhone. So one's based on all the customers being very happy and joyous and taking photos and taking movies and everything working. And if it's not an iPhone, it's not an iPhone. And the second one's premise is we make the hardware, we make the software. The hardware takes advantage of the software takes advantage of the hardware, so everything just works together seamlessly. And if it's not an iPhone, it's not an iPhone.
No, I haven't seen those, so have to look out for them.
Yeah. And there was one other thing that came up this week, just about production, and I was reading last night that apparently Apple are doing some production for musos that are on Apple Music now. Whether it's live, I didn't quite gather whether it was all live production or if they were just making videos for maybe to up the quality, maybe for some of the smaller people. I haven't got the whole story yet.
That could be interesting because that could go some way towards just
getting rid of the labels.
Not the record labels altogether. Yeah, so maybe that's
get
where this
rid
is
of the
already.
labels.
Yes.
You can do it that way instead of having to buy them all outright with their petty cash.
They'll slowly take over.
Yeah. So that's
okay. Yeah, I reckon that might do us for this week. Obviously there wasn't much to discuss. We soon fill up the time.
Yeah.
So Garth will still be away next week, I imagine, on his cruise. Yes, it's okay for some.
Yes.
So at least we'll be here next week, and
looking
hopefully
forward to it.
More rumours, more news, iPad Pros. Who knows?
But there was something else supposed to be released.
Yeah, something else.
Isn't there new iPods coming this week? That'll give us something to talk about next week.
Oh, the coloured ones.
Yes. So
we'll keep an eye out for that.
We'll never know.
Very good. That's right. Okay, we'll wrap it there. Thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you, Michael. We'll catch you next week.
Thanks, mate. Here we go.